Hello and happy Earth Day. I'm Della Watkins, Executive Director of the Columbia Museum of Art in Columbia, South Carolina. Art can teach us a lot about our history on this planet. It tells the story of our human experience, what has stayed the same, what has changed for the better, and also for the worse. Today, we look at an example from our own backyard of humanity's negative impact on the natural world. As a keeper of art, heritage, and culture, I believe in the need for advocacy and protection of our environment, which has served as inspiration for art for thousands of years. I hope you will join me in this all-important cause. With that, I turn things over to Glenna Barlow, our Curator of Education, to tell you more about a work from our collection, Coal Car by Edmund Yadgin.
Art really can be both a promise of untapped potential as well as a harbinger of what's to come. And this piece gives us a little bit of both. So here we have a view of Columbia, South Carolina in the 1950s. What was happening in the US in the 1950s? Well, of course, it's coming right after World War II. So there's a real period of prosperity. There's been a lot of growth in terms of technology. People are anxious to spend money again. So there's this boom of consumerism. In the US and in cities like Columbia, it meant growth. And this often meant growth of cities and expansion into the suburbs. And that's really what we're starting to see in this image. So Yadgin often found cities as a source of inspiration, whether in New York or South Carolina or many of the cities he visited in between. And it does tell us a little bit of something about what Columbia looked like in 1953. We see buildings densely packed together. We see power lines that kind of dominate the upper part of our image here. We see a water tower. We see train tracks and the eponymous coal car, the name of our piece here, right in the foreground. So at the turn of the 20th century, the US really relied heavily on coal as its main source of energy. And as the decades passed, the demand for gasoline really pushed petroleum to the forefront. So trains even began switching from coal to diesel power. In fact, coal production actually reached its lowest point in the 1950s. So while coal cars were once ubiquitous on trains, it's possible that this very coal car was beginning to look like a relic of the past when Yadgin painted it in 1953. The use of coal has actually increased since the 1950s and is now primarily used to produce energy for buildings and homes rather than power trains. But of course, we now know the dangerous effects of coal production, to say nothing of coal mining. Chemically, coal is mostly carbon, and when that's burned, it reacts with oxygen in the air to produce carbon dioxide. And of course, we now know that when it is released into the atmosphere, it contributes to climate change. But if we look beyond this coal car, we can see the city which Yadgin has imagined in shades of coral, yellow, and green. And if we look really closely, we'll see that there are actually signs of construction that are ongoing. So this object here is a crane. And if we look carefully, we can see there's a wrecking ball attached to it. We also see these little gold-colored piles of dirt just next to it, which makes sense. That sandy color, I'm sure, represents the sandy soil here that we have in the Midlands and what we sometimes call the Sandhills region. The sand here is still mined even today for its pure silica content. But this ongoing construction is really a reminder that when something is built, it usually means that something is destroyed as well. That might be trees, it might be a mountainside, it might be existing structures. But for construction and growth to happen, there's also the necessity often for destruction. And then if we look even closer still, we can see some of these billboards, that ubiquitous sign of consumerism and capitalism, which is probably driving a lot of this growth and development. So can this image be both a celebration of prosperity and a prophecy about the harmful effects of certain practices on our environment? I would say yes. Art can be both beautiful and important and impactful in its message. We can learn something from it. And not just that, mining or burning coal was harmful or bad, but that these actions have consequences. And as we learn more about the harmful effects of these behaviors on our animals, our habitats, fellow humans, cultural heritage, and the world that we hold dear, we know that we can make changes to try to restore our Earth and preserve those things that we love. So on this Earth Day, we want to reflect on the beauty of the world, whether you see that in a vibrant painting like this one, or nature that surrounds us every day. So thank you for joining us on behalf of the CMA, and happy Earth Day.